Experienced basketball teams have won all the championships in the portal COVID NIL era, but the Duke Blue Devils are the betting favorite to break that trend this year.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Tuesday. It's April Fool's Day. We should have done something. Cam, terrible. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for inviting us into your earbuds or eyeballs or whatever it is to kick off your day the right way. Special shout out to all the everydayers who are here with us and all the great members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Joining me today on the show is our guy, Cam Salerno, fresh off a great weekend out at the West Regional there in the Golden Gate City. Great stuff. Excited to unpack that with Cam. He is a great college basketball and college football writer at CBS Sports, and it's always a joy to have our buddy from the West Coast on. Cam, great to have you. Excited to hear about your trip and experiences this weekend. We're also going to look at some superlatives, guys. This man writes the Freshman Watch for CBS Sports. We're going to look at some freshmen who are helping and hurting their stock and some other things. But where we want to start, Cameron Salerno, is we have seen in this era of the COVID portal and NIL, I said COVID portal. That's hilarious. And look, it's all honestly,
it's,
might
it's
as well.
The new Mick Bruin, I will say that's the new saying. You just got to run with it.
Yes, absolutely. That might be a new shout for the end of the show. But in this COVID portal NIL era, what we've seen is these teams that get old and stay old win the championships. And it's funny when we look at the makeup of the Final Four, Cam, we have Auburn, who I just saw somebody post today that their starting lineup has an older average age than the Atlanta Hawks starting lineup.
That's nuts.
We've got Houston, who relies heavily on upperclassmen, and the same is true for Florida. And you juxtapose that with this Duke team, who, while they have some really important upperclassmen pieces, is led and dominated by a freshman trio and some freshmen off the bench. Interestingly enough, Cam, it is the Duke Blue Devils who are the betting favorites to win this thing. So what do you think, as we start our conversation today, prevails in this thing? The talented youth movement or these other three experienced teams?
I think I'd be foolish to go against the pick I made about a month ago. I'm going to go Duke. Like, they remind me of a lot of their 2015 team that won the title to an extent. I mean, it's obviously not the same team, but they did have three freshman starters on that team: Jahlil Okafor, Justice Winslow, and
Tyus Jones. One of the Jones brothers.
You can't forget about Tyus Jones. I don't know why I blinked on that. But then, they also had Grayson Allen off the bench, who was a freshman, and he took over the title game as well. So kind of the makeup of that Duke team was led around freshmen. They obviously had Emil Jefferson, and they had Quinn Cook, an experienced veteran point guard, similar to how Duke has Tyrese Proctor. So, I mean, they are a veteran team in a sense where, they do have a solid guard, but I mean, I think Cooper Flagg is the best player in the country. Like, he has proved it, like, in this tournament throughout the season. And it's no disrespect to Janai Broome. Like, he's incredible in his own right, but I Cooper Flagg is the best player in the country. Like, he should win National Player of the Year. Like, he's solidified himself. But I mean, the cool storyline, I think, for the Houston Duke game is, for starters, like, Houston was the team that lost to Duke last year in the Sweet 16.
Right.
Jamal Schade got hurt. That was an unfortunate injury, just because, if he doesn't get hurt, like, I think Houston wins that game.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. Yes.
And so it's kind of revenge for them because they brought a lot of their starters back. I mean, they lost Shed, but then now they have just a veteran team. Like, I will say this too. Like, I love Kelvin Sampson. Like, I think he's one of the best coaches in the sport. Like, he just is so good. Like, and I understand, like, he has gotten the proper love that he deserves, but I still think he's underrated. Like, in that sense, like, he win a national title this year would do wonders for his resume. But I still think no matter what, even if he doesn't win a national title in his coaching tenure, it'd be huge for him. But then kind of going back to Auburn, like, I mean, Chad Baker Mazara is almost as old as me, which is pretty crazy to think about, where I've been, almost 3 years removed from college. So yeah, I mean, that's just the new era of college basketball. Like, if teams aren't really recruiting like college freshmen or incoming college freshmen, like, sure, the top 50 guys are going and signing with schools, but like, if you're not a consensus 4-star recruit, like, good luck trying to get a full ride scholarship to one of these Power 6 schools. So like, it's all so obvious. Like, if you're a coach of a program trying to win a national title, like, would you rather have an 18-year-old freshman who's unproven, or would you rather have a 21-year-old guy who's played in, whatever league for 3 years and been a 3-year starter? Like, it's a no-brainer. So I do think college basketball has obviously changed in recent years, and teams are getting older. And it was crazy because, like, the one and done era, I think, is still prominent to this day. But I think it's kind of like, it's shifting towards college we're just stacking freshmen to build their rosters and be competitive. And now it's like, hey, let's get older. So it's pretty crazy to see how that has changed in the NIL era. But it's pretty wild to think about.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're so right, Cam, about I love your comparison to 2015 Duke to this team, which is funny, a decade apart, because while they were led in so many ways by freshmen, and while, as you said, Grayson Allen, second leading scorer in the national championship game coming off the bench, those older guys, in particular Emil Jefferson and Quinn Cook, were so critical to that team in the same way that, as you said, Tyrese Proctor is. And you look at Sion James, like, and I know he didn't have like a ton of tournament experience at the same level coming over from Tulane, but so critical. Malik Brown coming in. And then obviously we've got literal national championship experience in the form of Mr. Mason Gillis coming over from Purdue. We look back at really the only other freshman dominated team to win a championship in the portal era. Not in the portal era, in the one and done era. And that's the 2012 Kentucky team, who had not just Anthony Davis and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, but you had Duron Lamb, who was a sophomore, Terrence Jones, who's a sophomore, a senior Darius Miller, right? And so each of those teams had a lot of help. And I guess really we could identify one other freshman-laden championship team, but it wasn't the one and done era. And obviously that'd be 03 Syracuse with Carmelo and McNamara, but they had a junior Hakeem Warwick, for example. And so, man, really interesting, Cam. I think that comparison is really well done. So when we look at this thing, obviously it's not just about like, can Duke win out over these more experienced teams, but also I mentioned, Cam, you write the freshman watch for CBS Sports. Obviously Houston, Florida, not really relying on any of their freshmen, but for these other two rosters, they have some really interesting freshmen. Obviously, everyone knows about Cooper Flagg. But as you've gone through these season, writing these weekly updates, who are the other freshmen from Auburn and Duke that have been really impactful in your mind?
Tahad Pettiford.
Yeah.
Like, he is one of my favorite players in college basketball to watch. Like, just from a unbiased standpoint, like, I hope he does not go to the NBA. Like, if he comes back to Auburn next year, I think he's a preseason All-American candidate. Like, he is that good. Like, he is just so special to watch. Like, he's just so crafty, and like, just like the aura is off the charts. Like, he just it's just a fun player to watch. And then obviously Duke, like, obviously Cooper Flagg is someone we talk about all the time, and rightfully so, because I think, and kind of going back to, you mentioned Carmelo, like, I think Carmelo has one of the best one and done seasons ever in college basketball. If Cooper Flagg wins the national title, I think he's the best one. I think he's the best one and done player in college basketball history. So, but Common Mall Watch is someone who's really risen up draft boards for me. Like, I think he is, a 7'2" rim protecting center who is a great finisher around the rim. Like, he kind of does a little bit of everything. And then Knueppel is someone who also is kind of played really well in recent weeks, especially when Cooper Flagg went down in the ACC tournament. Like,
yes, great point.
Really up. So really like those players. And another guy too is Isaiah Evans, who doesn't really get a lot of shine, just because if he was at any other Power 6 program, like, he would be the face of their team. But for Duke, like, he just comes off the bench sparingly. So I'm curious what he does. Like, I think he could be an NBA guy this year if he decides to come out. But also too, like if he returns to school, I think it'd be huge to kind of usher in a new era of Duke basketball and the post Cooper Flagg life. And it's so tough. Like they have to go from Cooper Flagg to the Boozer brothers. So it's a tough transition for Duke, who going from the number 1 player in the country to the number 2 player in the country. So those are the freshmen I'm going to be watching this weekend. So I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. Like there's a lot of I think that's what's cool about the NCAA tournament right now. Like at this stage, like there's so many storylines and there's so many just good basketball games are going to be played like in the next week. So I'm excited. Like I think it's a lot of my friends have texted me in recent weeks, like who are casual college basketball friends or fans, and pretty much said like, hey, like this is chalk madness. Like I'm not having fun watching. And I'm like, just wait. Like the matchups
basketball is gonna be so good.
The matchups you're gonna get are gonna be worth it. So we saw some of the power weight matchups this past weekend. So some were hype and some didn't, but still, I mean, getting Alabama Duke in the Elite Eight is something that is very rare. Like two of the best offenses, and I think it honestly speaks more to Duke than Alabama, because Alabama, I think, scored 113 points against BYU.
That's right.
And they scored like 65, 68 against Duke. Like
85,
it also just shows how good Duke is defensively. I know they're the number 1 offense in the country, like statistically and like metrics wise, but their defense is pretty good too. So I think it's going to be a great matchup of defense versus defense. And then Houston too, they featured the number 1 3-point shooting offense in the country. I think that's kind of how they've evolved this season under Kelvin Sampson. Like they were an average 3-point shooting team last year, and then they've gotten better in that department. So I'm excited. Like I obviously, like it's crazy to say that Auburn and Florida, which is an incredible matchup, is like the second best game.
The undercard, yeah,
it's the undercard. Like I had a feeling Duke Houston would be the late game just because I figured it would be. But the fact that that's our undercard is pretty nuts. So I'm excited. Like Saturday's gonna be awesome.
Oh, I absolutely cannot wait. Something you said that was interesting to me about Isaiah Evans. We were just talking about Grayson Allen as being kind of that guy who could just blow up and did a couple times. That could be Isaiah Evans this weekend, either Saturday or Monday, to help Duke along there. You just never know. And then when Malik Brown's been out, another freshman we've seen step up a couple times there is Patrick Ngangba, who's really had some nice moments filling in behind Malawach and in place of Malik Brown there. Really interesting. Now, Cam and I are going to play a game of NCAA tournament superlatives, and I'm very excited for this. Who's helped their stock? Who's hurt their stock? What team has been that played up to their expectations, and what team maybe didn't do so well? We're going to get Cam's answers on all that and so much more coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Monarch Money, you ever check your bank account and wonder like, hey, where'd all my money go? Well, between dining out and online shopping and entertainment, it's so easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over all your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, your investments, and spending all in one place. So you just stop managing your money and you start building wealth. That's what we're all trying to do. So instead of juggling multiple apps, keeping those balls in the air, you can use Monarch to check your finances and track your spending and even plan long-term goals. My wife and I, for example, we're always trying to make sure we're on the same page when it comes to finances. And thankfully, Monarch Money helps us do exactly that and make things smoother than ever when it comes to doing so. You can track shared accounts and personal accounts. You can set goals and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. This episode's also brought to you by our good friends at Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team live and feeling the energy of the crowd. Like you could do that this weekend in San Antonio and witnessing unforgettable moments. Cam and I were just talking about how great these matchups are going to be with 4 1 seeds. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. And getting tickets to those events shouldn't be stressful. So that's where Game Time comes in. They make it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. They've got this feature called Game Time Picks, where they use this curation to make it easier than ever to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. I just checked the Game Time app literally before we hopped on, and there's some great deals on huge matchups this weekend. You can go to all 3 games, a ticket for Saturday and Monday, for as low as $347, or just Saturday's semifinals for $280, or Monday's championship game for as low as $131. Man, that's some great deals. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Okay, Cam Salerno and I are going to play Superlatives NCAA Tournament Edition. Cam, my first question. What player in the NCAA tournament has helped their draft stock the most? Maybe we could put it in a more fun way. Who made themselves some money in March?
If that feels like a Jeopardy question. I'm going to go with two players on Florida, Walter Clayton Jr. and Thomas Houck. Like, I think both of those guys are going to be making money if they both, I mean, whether it's NIL, I mean, obviously Walter Clayton's out eligibility, but for sure, definitely. Walter Clayton, I think, is a fascinating draft case for me. Like, I think just the way he plays, I think can translate to the NBA. Like, he's a quick guard, he can shoot, he's strong, he's athletic. Like, he's kind of can do a little bit of everything. So I really like his draft stock. I think it's trending up. And then Thomas, like, is someone that's really stood out to me. Like, I think he would start on most Power 6 teams in the country, and he's somehow a backup on Florida just because their front court depth is that good. Like, I talked to him after the game. Like, apparently he grew up a huge Florida fan, so that definitely helped in his recruitment. So he wasn't a highly touted recruit either. Like, he was only a 3-star coming out of high school. So if he comes back to Florida for another year, I think he could be a first-round pick easily. If he comes out this year, I think he's somewhere in that early second, maybe late first, depending on how the rest of the tournament goes and the combine goes. So those are the two guys who have, like you said, made a little bit of money for themselves this weekend.
I love it. Great calls, Cam. And what's wild to me, just quick aside about that front court, is Chinyelu is a sophomore. Houck is a sophomore. Condon is a sophomore. And Handlockton would have been, but he pulled his red shirt, but he's still got another year. I mean, like, all four of them could return to this team. Will they? I don't know. That's a loaded front court.
Know who he looks like to, like, I literally cannot tell the difference is Larry Markkinen. Like, he has the same exact hair.
Yes. So, I think about the hair. Yeah, dude.
Yes, that's who I saw him on the court. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I've joked with my friends about for like a few years. Like, he literally looks like Larry Markkinen.
I love that. All right, Cam, let's flip the script and say, what player in the NCAA tournament has maybe lost themselves some money?
I would say just not necessarily how he played, but just because his team didn't make really that deep of a run. I'm going to go with Trey Johnson just because I really like Trey Johnson as a prospect. Like, I think he's comfortably on my top 5 for me. But the problem is, like, when players are playing more games, and it maybe sounds super cliche, like Common Wallawatch could jump him in the draft. Like, I think Common has a chance to be a top 5 pick. I really like Trey as a prospect. Like, I think he's one of the best scorers in this class. Like, he is just super good. But I think it's more of, other guys performing in this class who could jump him. I think Trey still goes somewhere in that 5 to 7 range when it's all
that's a good.
Yeah. But, when you look at draft slots and how much money, like, each draft slot is worth, there's a pretty big difference between going 5th and going like 8th or 9th. So if it's being technical, I would go Trey Johnson, but I still love him as a prospect. I think I'd probably have him 5 or 6 my personal board right now, but that's the guy for me who's kind of lowered his draft stock just a little bit in the last few weeks.
Ever so slightly, but like you said, ever so slightly can still mean a whole chunk of money.
Ever so slightly could be a few $1 million. You never know.
So, Cam, here's the next one. We're going to go big and little on this as well. What team, in your mind, overachieved in the NCAA tournament based on what you expected?
2 names. Actually, you could probably go 3, and they're all related.
Okay.
BYU, Kentucky, Arkansas.
I like it. Go.
They all have, a very common similarity. All first-year coaches. They're all going to be forever connected with each other because it was a domino effect that carried over in the offseason when Calipari left Kentucky to go to Arkansas. But I would say the team that overachieved the most out of that group is Kentucky because, let's be fair, this isn't a slide in their roster, but this is the worst roster that Mark Pope is going to have. Like, he's going to have better rosters for next year and years to follow. Like, I think his teams are going to be really good. I think he's a great coach. I think it's a breath of fresh air for Kentucky and their fans, and just college basketball as a whole. Like, when we thought about Kentucky, for me growing up, like, I always saw about these powerhouse teams that had multiple NBA draft guys in their team. And this Kentucky team doesn't really necessarily have any like clear-cut first-round prospects in their team.
Yeah.
That could be the case maybe next year, maybe the year after. But for me personally, like I think this is a new Kentucky team, and it's kind of like a new era of I think Mark Pope is kind of leaving his stamp on there. So for them to go to the Sweet 16 in year one is really impressive.
I love that. Yes, I love the point about all three of those schools that were the back end of the coaching carousel that SMU sent off, by the way, which is so crazy. All making the Sweet 16. That's a great call. All right, Cam, let's flip that one. Who is a team that you think underachieved in the NCAA tournament based on what you expected?
I'll tell you this. I'd expect them to lose early, but I'll go with St. John's. Like, I just think because they're the number 2 seed, Rick Pitino's awesome. Like, I don't want to, like beat their drum, but like I didn't think they were gonna win. Like I personally had them losing the second round, so it's exactly where I had them losing. So I'm not really that surprised, but disappointing season. Obviously, the first number 2 seed to go out. That's obviously going to be the easy punching bag target. So Rick Pitino, awesome. His team shooting the ball, not so much.
And they had a good day in the transfer portal on Monday, and so they're looking to reload there with the loss of R.J. Lewis. All right, Cam, last question for you in our Superlatives NCAA Tournament edition. Which mid-major coach has changed the trajectory of their career with what they've done in the past couple weeks?
I got to go with Ben McCollum. Like, I think that was just a terrific hire from Iowa. Like, I really think he's going to be able to succeed in the Big Ten. And then also kind of another name too, which like is just a mid-major who I think I really like him as a coach is Eric Olson at UC San Diego going to New Mexico. I really think that's going to be huge for New Mexico. Like New Mexico is one of the best mid-majors in the country. So for them to get a rising star and Eric Olson, I think is a great hire. So those are the 2 names that come to mind. But Ben McCollum, I think he's going to do incredible work at Iowa. Like I think that's a fantastic hire, and it was just a no-brainer too. Like with Darren DeVries off the board going to Indiana, I think that's the best hire Iowa could have made.
Man, and what that might be my favorite story. The whole D2 arc of Drake and the 4 of the 5 step, man, it's so cool. That's part of why we love what we do, Cam. It's just absolutely so much fun. Now, I mentioned earlier, but Cameron was in San Francisco for the West Regional this weekend. And so we want to just hear some of the stories, the craziness of both of Texas Tech's basketball games this weekend were insane. So we'll get some updates on that from Cam, all coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. So whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for that extra edge, their free Trademaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM to start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 to get 5% off your first order. Check it all out at supplyhouse.com. It's great again to be joined by Cameron Salerno today on Locked On College Basketball. Great college basketball and college football writer for CBS Sports. Make sure you check out all his great work, including he mentioned Thomas Houck earlier, the great Florida big man backup who dropped 20 the other day. Got a great article he's working on right now for Houck. And Cam, when is that projected to drop?
Should be Wednesday if I have the courage to stay up late tonight and finish it. Like I have a bunch of words written down. I have all my interviews transcribed, just all about, making sure a story comes together. So he was a great interview. He did tell me after the game, his favorite athlete is Tim Tebow and he hopes to meet him. So I would guess if Florida wins the national championship, the chances of him meeting Mr. Tebow would be pretty high, I would say.
Man, I would hope Tim Tebow goes to the Final Four, and then maybe they could actually meet in person in San Antonio. Are you going to San Antonio this weekend?
I am not. I wish I was. A lot of my colleagues are.
Sure.
They're going to have a great time, and they're going to an epic Final Four. But I'll be back in Los Angeles watching the games like everyone else. So it'll be fun. Yeah, it'll be fun.
That'll be good. Okay, so Cam, you were there at the Chase Center this weekend. Would you just kind of unpack the experience for us? And I want to start with Arkansas and kind of, I guess we could call it a bit of a choke job there. You know, it's been a weird up and down first year for Cal in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I just drove from an hour and a half ago, by the way. But like things really came together. As you said, they were kind of the Cinderella of this tournament in a weird way.
Yeah.
And then just lost it down the stretch against Texas Tech. What happened there in the building? What'd you see and experience?
Yeah, it was a great experience. I will say, like, first off, real quick, I had the best seat in the house. I sat right behind Kevin Harlan, probably one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, like in this industry. Like, it was like watching him call the game was one of the coolest things ever. Like, what he does is like when he makes those big calls, like he always leans back in his chair and like puts his microphone to his mouth, like, and so you can just see the visual. It just was super cool. So awesome experience there.
Did he ever accidentally like bump you and have to apologize for leaning back too far?
No, like I was above him enough. Like, but anyways, talked to him before the game on Thursday, then had a pretty long conversation with him on Saturday. So one of the nicest people ever. Awesome. But for the actual games itself, like I will say, so I missed the first few minutes of the Arkansas Texas Tech game because Kevin Willard was having his press conference after they lost to Florida. Obviously, Willard's saga, or however you want to call it, has been probably one of the biggest storylines in college basketball. The worst kept secret in the world was that he was going to Villanova. So I was writing about that after that game. The first game, Florida, Maryland, not that eventful. Arkansas, Texas Tech. I would say there was a 65-35, maybe 60-40 crowd split in favor of Texas Tech. Like Texas Tech traveled really well.
They do.
So yeah, they did a great job. There's a few moments I think in that game that kind of, really got the crowd into and kind of flipped the script. The one that comes to mind is I don't know if you watch or remember this off the top of your head, but when they got 6 consecutive offensive rebounds when they were down by 13 points and then they scored and cut to 11, that's when you kind of thought like, okay, like either they're gonna lose, but they might go down fighting, and then just Darren Williams, man. Like I covered him when I was at the Sacramento Bee. He was playing high school basketball in Sacramento for 2 years. So I got to see him play a little bit. So for him to show on the big stage, for him to not only hit the game tying 3-pointer, but to also hit the game winner in overtime was fantastic. So I was in the Arkansas locker room after the game because I wrote about Arkansas and kind of their collapse. And John Calipari essentially blew one of his one of his best coaching jobs in the worst possible way. So the Arkansas locker room was obviously what you expected, just super sad and emotional and raw. So it was a weird experience, but I would say just kind of a crazy game. But then I would never thought that, less than 48 hours later, I would get an even crazier game, which was obviously Texas Tech versus Florida. I was like, with the 5-minute mark when Texas Tech went up by 10, I was like, okay, like this is going to happen. Like I honestly was like texting with some of my buddies like before the game, was like, I think Texas Tech's going to win. Like I picked Florida, which I know is a bad hedge, but I just felt really good about Texas Tech. Like I think they thought they could match Florida's physicality. They had the front court depth. They kind of punched up and weight. Like they could hang with Florida, and they obviously did. And then, Walter Clayton Jr. took over, and Thomas Houck did as well. Like I don't think that gets talked about enough. Like he hit back-to-back threes, and he also got an offensive rebound that led to a Clayton 3 as well. So that was a huge, huge difference in the game. But as for the Clayton shot, like I was mesmerized. Like I wrote about this today in CBSSports.com. Like, and it was a buy or sell. I was talking about if Walter Clayton Jr. is best guard in the country, which I said yes. I've had the privilege of my journalism career. I've been doing this for about 10 years. I've covered high school basketball games, I've covered college basketball games, NBA playoffs, you name it, I've probably covered it. Walter Clayton Jr. shot in that moment to take that shot down to, and the way he did it too, like he dribbled into the paint and then dribbled back and hit a fadeaway 3. There's not many people can hit that shot, and one of the other people who probably can hit that shot on a pretty consistent basis plays for the home team inside that building, Steph Curry.
That's great.
I think that I was debating this, and I don't want to be prisoner of the moment. And I know it's recency bias, But I think that is the greatest basketball shot I've seen in person in that moment, like in my journalism career. So impressive. I mean, Walter Clayton was amazing.
What's nice about that is you don't have to debate it with anyone but yourself. You get to choose the best shot you've ever seen.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was thinking about like the other one that comes to mind is Julian Strawther's 3 versus UCLA. I was at that game where they were down by 1 and he hit a Chris Jenkins like 3-pointer at the top of the key. So that was really good too. And it was later in the game. So I guess they were down by 1. But for Clayton to hit that shot like in that moment, I think it was even better. So that's my opinion. Debatable.
And I'm sticking to it. Oh, man, great stuff, Cam. Thank you so much. So, folks, again, as a reminder, make sure you check out this Thomas Houck article coming out. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Wednesday, if Cam can stay up late tonight and get that done. Cam, thanks so much for sharing from your experiences this weekend and about some of the great kind of behind-the-scenes moment you have had as well. Always appreciate getting to check in with you folks. Make sure to check out all of Cam's great work there on cbssports.com and along with the rest of his colleagues, as he was talking about as well, who do such a good job covering our wonderful sport, college basketball. All right, Cam, final 4 weeks ahead of us. It's going to be great. Lots of great, exciting stuff to come. Got 3 basketball games left. Can't wait to see it all. Folks, if you've not subscribed to the show on YouTube, please go ahead and do that. If you've not joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, we would love to have you in there. Great conversations happening all the time about the games, about the portal, the coaching carousel, all of it. That link is in the show notes, and it's absolutely free to join. As always, I want to say apologies to the lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes and shouts. As Cam said earlier to our guy, Mick Bruins. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until next time, Cam, you know what's up. Peace.